What to do when OCD makes you feel completely powerless, like no matter how hard you try, it keeps dragging you back into the same old loop, the same doubts, the same compulsions. In this episode, I'm talking about something that doesn't get enough attention, and that is how to shift out of that powerless mindset and to start building real control, not by fighting the thoughts, but by changing how you respond to them. If you are struggling with OCD, I offer a free discovery call. To get that, you can head over to my website, robertjamescoaching.com. There's a link in the show notes. When I was still really struggling with OCD, one of the worst things about it was the sense of powerlessness that would always be there. I kind of felt that I was almost a kind of slave to the thoughts. When things kind of popped up into my consciousness, I kind of felt like I had to perform the compulsions. I had to have certainty. I had to kind of figure them out. And, this is a horrible place to be. I think it's one of the worst emotions that a human can feel, is that sense that you don't have control over things. When you feel that sense of powerlessness, you feel that you can't enact change in your life. You can't find a positive way, whatever problems that you might be struggling with. And, that's incredibly demoralizing. But actually, it's so important to realize that we really can get back in touch with our personal power. OCD has kind of played a trick on us. It's tried to persuade us that that we don't have that power anymore, that because we've experienced OCD, and we've kind of maybe been doing these compulsions for quite some time. Well, now we've trained our brain to be like this and we can't go back to how we were before. It's true that perhaps we can't exactly go back to how we were before. Probably you don't want to, because we're all growing and evolving. But actually, we really can learn to overcome OCD, and we really can learn how to kind of teach ourselves to be empowered again, to kind of take back that control from the OCD, to kind of prove to it that actually, we're the boss. The OCD, it feels like it's kind of taken the reins from us, but it hasn't. It's just the trickster. It loves to play these tricks on us and to try to persuade us that we've lost control. But the reality is something quite different. And I think one of the things about OCD is because perhaps we have lost that sense of control, that we do feel a bit powerless when the obsessions come up. Something about that is that when we perform compulsions, it actually gives us this kind of false sense of control. Temporarily when you perform a compulsion, you do actually get something from that. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. It tends to lower the anxiety a little bit. It tends to make you feel a little bit better in the short term. We kind of find ourselves in the OCD cycle when we are stuck in the OCD, and we tend to spin in that cycle. We tend to go round and round with it. But actually, when we learn, that we don't have to do that we can make an intervention, that we can allow the anxiety to be there, that's when we can start getting our power back. But unfortunately, we tend to not do that because we're so used to this kind of false sense of control, where, we are performing those compulsions. Momentarily, it is making us feel a bit better. And so we keep coming back to it. We keep doing the same things over and over, even though we keep getting the same results. And, there's a reason for why we do that. On an emotional level, it does make us feel a bit better, even though kind of intellectually we understand that it's not helping us at all. On that more important kind of emotional level, we can't quite let go of it, or if you're really stuck with it, you aren't quite letting go of it. Our language is so important, it's really, really important that you don't tell yourself that you can't do something. It's just that maybe you can't do it now. It doesn't mean that you can't do it in the future. And so when we've kind of tricked ourselves or taught ourselves that we can't let go of compulsions because they're the thing that kind of makes us feel better. Well, we've created this kind of false sense of control, and we really cling to it. Learning to let go of OCD is really about interrupting that, recognizing that although, temporarily feeling a bit better, is nice in the short term, that it's never a kind of long-term solution. It's always going to kind of keep us stuck. And, I think there's some awareness of this. I think deep down when we're performing the compulsions, we know that, we're not going to feel better by doing this, but that the feelings can be so difficult with OCD. We can find ourselves in such a hard place that even though we know on some level that this isn't probably going to help in the long term, we keep on doing it anyway. And the way out of this trap, as I was kind of talking about a little bit earlier, is really learning how to feel those difficult emotions. And, this is why we do kind of exposure for OCD, because when you can allow yourself to kind of face one of your fears, to allow the discomfort to be there, to not perform compulsions when you're experiencing that fear. Ultimately, that's how you can learn to bring more acceptance to it, how you can habituate to that fear and then move past it. Over the years, I've supported many people dealing with OCD and anxiety, even those who've already worked with multiple therapists. And here's what one client recently had to say. Rob is wonderfully knowledgeable and empathetic, and he also has a deep and lived understanding of OCD and anxiety. For more than a decade, I've seen multiple therapists with varying therapeutic approaches for OCD, and Rob is by far the best person that I've worked with. Within a few short months, Rob has helped me move to the healthiest mental space I've been for a long time. I completely recommend Rob to anyone seeking evidence-based, empathetic and effective support for OCD and/or anxiety. Curious to see how coaching might help you too? Let's connect for a free discovery call. It's a relaxed 30-minute chat where you can ask questions, tell me what you're dealing with, and see if we're a good fit to work together. You can head over to robertjamescoaching.com. There's a link in the show notes. Acceptance commitment therapy teaches us something similar. When we learn to kind of let go of an obsession, maybe you've been triggered by something. Perhaps an old thought has popped up out of nowhere, or if you're struggling with checking the oven, you're trying to kind of leave the house. Obviously, there's that urge to go back to kind of check it again and again and again. But acceptance commitment therapy teaches us to say, well, actually, what do I really value in this situation? Rather than going back and checking the oven for the fourth or the fifth time, which is probably going to make me late for work, and my boss will be annoyed with me, and maybe I won't be there for the important meeting that I really want to be there for. We kind of ask ourselves a question. Look, can I tolerate the uncertainty of not checking again? Can I just leave and allow that uncertainty to be there in the background? And of course, if you're able to do this, if you're able to say, well, what's my more important values here? Do I really value this fear? Do I really value checking for the fourth or the fifth time? Or do actually I really value, kind of turning up for, at work on time? Making sure that my relationship with my boss is still good, making sure that my relationship with my co-workers is still good. Of course, we know the answers to those questions. The problem is in that moment when we have to make that choice, it's incredibly difficult. But again, this is, what we have to learn to do little by little. It's not necessarily about throwing yourself into the deep end here. It's about choosing, one or two things that you're going to focus on each day and proving to yourself that you can take action with those one or two things. You can push yourself a little bit. You can allow a little bit more uncertainty, and you can choose to focus on the present moment and doing a valued activity instead of doing a compulsion. And when you do this over time, it really does add up. You start kind of demonstrating to yourself that you can allow that uncertainty. You can allow that anxiety to be there. And of course, that really starts to make you feel better about yourself. You start getting more and more confidence. You start realizing that actually you can do much more than the OCD has persuaded you. The OCD has been telling you for a long time that perhaps you can't do this, or you can't do that. You can't leave without checking 10 times, or you have to do this ritual, or whatever it might be for you. And the reality is that we can all do a lot more than we think. And it's really about kind of demonstrating to yourself through maybe doing some exposure activities or applying acceptance and commitment therapy. Little by little, you can really demonstrate to yourself that, actually you do have control, and it's not a false sense of control. If you're willing to allow that anxiety and that uncertainty to be there a little bit more, that's when you can really get in touch with the real control. And, you start taking control over the OCD and feeling a bit more like the boss in your life. Many thanks, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed that. All right, remember that I do offer a free discovery call. To get that, you can head over to my website, robertjamescoaching.com. Many thanks, and I will see you in the next video. This video is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you are dealing with OCD, anxiety, or any mental health concerns, please consult a licensed mental health professional for support.